Mr. Beak's math class. Mr. Beak's math class. Yeah! Woo!
All right, thanks for joining me for another math lesson. Today we're going to be doing 1.1, solving equations using addition and subtraction. Pretty straightforward, and you probably have seen stuff like this before, but I just want to make sure we got it all down. So here's what it's going to be. How would you solve the following? Most of us can probably look at this equation 1 and think 12 plus what is 15? And most of us can probably be like, it's 3. It's not rocket science. And that is right. But what the plan is here is we want to get in the good habits of showing our work, because later on when the problems do get tricky, you can't just look at it and say, hey, I know it's 3. Okay, so here's what I do to solve all equations, whether they're easy or more or difficult, is I draw a line right down the middle to show the equality between this half and that half. And whatever I do to one side, I got to do to the other side. Okay, and so the goal all the time is to get the x all by itself. In this case, the x is all by is on that left-hand side, so it means we got to move the other stuff over. Okay, and so I have a positive 12 here. I want to move that over to the other side. So how do I do that? Well, what is the inverse operation? The inverse of plus is minus. And so I'm going to take my handy dandy red marker and go minus 12, and I'm minus 12. Did I do it to both sides? Yes, I did. So that crosses off, and I'm left with x all by itself. It drops down right there. 12 minus, or 15 minus 12 is 3. That's perfect. That's what I wanted. Okay? So similarly, when I have this one, I'm going to draw my line there. But in this case, I see a minus 7. What is the inverse of minus 7? It's a plus 7, of course. Okay? And so what I'm going to do is the same thing to both sides. It wipes that guy out, and I'm left with just what I wanted, the x all by itself, and that is in that case equals 25. And we are happy because we have two answers that are correct, and we're moving on to the next one. Okay, so hopefully those make sense. We're going to expand a little bit. Talk about vocab, equivalent equations. I'm going to just exit this so you can see all of them. Actually, maybe not. I'm going to keep them all up so we don't get too worded out. Equivalent equations are just two equations with the same solution. Okay, equivalent, equal, hint word in there. Inverse. This is kind of our big main word for this stuff, is the inverse. Operations that undo each other. So let me just ask you a question. If I have a plus, what's the inverse, or hence opposite of that? It is, of course, a minus. And if I have a multiply, what's the inverse of that? It is, of course, a, all right, the old school divided there, right there. And so if you have one or the other, we're going to do the opposite thing to reverse it, and therefore cancel it and solve for our equation. Okay? And then last but not least, a linear equation. Hint word in there is the word line. So equations where we just have an x, not an x squared or an x to the third or the fourth, etc. Okay? So I'm going to just take a look at a couple problems. I got a few here on this try it, and why don't we just follow along with me. So like I said, on every problem what I do is I put a line on there to show the equivalence between this half and that half. And so what we want to do, our final goal, is to get the x all by itself. Well, the x is on this left-hand side, so I want to keep it on that left-hand side and just move everything over. So in this case, what I'm going to do is add 7 to both sides. Why did I add 7? Because that cancels that. And so we're going to have negative 7, or 15 plus 7. Take it on your calculator if you don't know, but it's going to give you negative 8. Okay? We got a next problem. This one looks a little bit more difficult because we have a minus and a negative. Okay? For those of you who don't remember, when we have a minus and a negative right together, when they're smushed together, it becomes a big plus sign. So in essence, number 2 is this question. Okay? Now what I like to do is instead of rewriting it, I usually just take on this minus sign and that minus sign, I just take and I just cover them up with one big plus sign, so it saves me writing down this green step right here. But regardless, that's what it is. I'm going to keep it up just for this demonstration. But we have n plus 6 equals 4, and I'm going to draw my line down to show equality. I want to get n all by itself. So how do I move that one over? I'm minus 6. And I do it to both sides because I'm equal and fair. And final answer is going to be n equals negative 2. Yeah, we're learning stuff. We're getting smarter. All right. Number 3, I'm going to draw my line to show equality in between the two halves. Now, we don't want to be freaked out here, and we don't want to put y on this side. Why not? Because the y is on the right-hand side in this case. See it over there? So we're going to try to move everything else to the other side. So we can get our answer right here. And so this is a positive 10, so therefore the opposite, or excuse me, the inverse is to just minus it. So it cancels there. Negative 7 minus 10 is negative 17. And we have 3 correct answers. Hooray for us. Okay? That is the gist of it. Maybe I'll take a few more. I'll do a few more just to get us in the hang of it, just because I want you to learn it. All right? So number 4 here. I'm going to draw my line. We're going to solve this equation. What did I just say this minus and a negative is? I said it's a big plus sign, and it is. So that's what I would normally do if I was showing it. I'm just going to keep it like that, and I'm going to rewrite this down below just for our viewers to see what I'm doing. Okay? When I do that, how do I get z all by itself? How do I get z alone on the left-hand side? Well, I got to get rid of this 5. I'm not going to divide. I'm not going to multiply. I'm not going to add. That means I'm going to subtract. So I got a minus 5 to both sides, and therefore that cancels, and you get positive 16. Okay? Let me just skip over to number 6, and then we'll call it a day. We'll call it a lesson. Okay? This one is just a little bit of a thinker because it's got lots of weird negatives all over the place. But it does say negative 8, and it does say negative b. We'll have to watch out for that one. But most of us might know a plus and minus. That just becomes a negative 2. It's just a minus 2, right? And so if you rewrite it like that, maybe it looks a little bit easier till I can see that I have a plus 2, right? Now, officially that cancels, but I'm left with a negative b. And that's going to give me negative 6. Eventually we'll show you how to solve that mathematically, but I want you to just think. If negative b is negative 6, what do you think regular b is? Well, I think it's going to be positive 6, right? B is 6, negative b is negative 6, and that's exactly right. Okay? So, thanks for joining us for this lesson. Hopefully those kind of make sense and don't hang you up too much. So, take care.
Mr. Peak's math class. Mr. Peak's math class.